Boy, this is going to be a controversial video. Fnaf 1 was the first Fnaf game to throw a bunch of curveballs at the lore, and to this day, it is still probably the most debated about Fnaf game of all. The thing people debate about the most is the identity of the bite victim of 83, the crying child. There's a bunch of different theories surrounding this kid, and today I'm going to be discussing my thoughts on how he might just be the one you should not have killed from Ultimate Custom Night. So without any further ado, let's just get into the video.
Let's join in the bench. Prepare by making mess. Let's join in the bench. It's what you say, I become obsessed.
Before we start, I'd just like to address that I'm definitely not certain about this theory. There is definitely some flaws with it, but I think it may work overall. I'd also like to say that I'm not going to imply that I believe BB5th, as I definitely do not. But a lot of these points I make in this video are from a friend of mine who does believe BB5th.
Shadow Libra.
I'd just like to say that of the friends I've made from doing YouTube, Libra has to be one of the best friends I've made, even if he believes BB5th, but that's besides the point. Libra has a really underrated channel with around 700 subscribers, and he definitely deserves more. So if you're not subscribed to him already, please do check out the link in this video's description and subscribe to his channel. Also, I wrote this video before my timeline even came out, and well, this is not included in my timeline because when I started believing this theory and started working on this video, I had already finished the timeline, which is slightly unfortunate, but at least this way people won't call me a goofball for believing this theory in something as big as a timeline. Because if I had included this in my timeline, I would probably not give much evidence for it during the timeline, because evidence in a timeline video was not really the priority. And yeah, I did give evidence on certain things, but those were things most people didn't believe. That's why I gave evidence for them. But the evidence made the video much longer than it needed to be. So if I gave evidence for this theory in the timeline, it would probably be nearly an hour long. So yeah, now let's just get into the theory. I don't want to waste any more time. First, I want to explain why Happiest Day must be for the bite victim, just so you can have a general understanding of why the bite victim must possess Golden Freddy. And keep in mind, this is just one of the many reasons, and I'll probably make a separate video on that sometime in the future. In the post-night 6 minigame of Fnaf 4, Charlotte, the puppet, is the Fredbear plush. We know this due to the many parallels the bite victim has with Jake in the real Jake and in the Stitch Race stories. And the night before Jake dies in the real Jake, the puppet shows up in a scene kind of mirroring the post-night 6 minigame of Fnaf 4. We know it's the puppet in the real Jake due to her appearance in the 7th Stitch Wraith epilogue. In both situations, they make a whisper sound, so they must be one and the same because Scott doesn't do coincidences. So as we see in Fnaf World, she sets up Happiest Day and leaves the pieces for Crying Child to find himself in order to save himself. But in order to give him the power to do that, she puts the spirit into Golden Freddy. We know it has to be him finding the pieces for himself because Glitch Fredbear says the pieces are in place for us and that we need to find them. This leads some people to believe that the bite victim sets up Happiest Day, which is true to a certain extent, but he has to be putting all the pieces together for himself, because if he wasn't, why couldn't Charlotte just do all of the work? And if the bite victim were Mike, which honestly I just don't think can be the case, but even if he were, and he were doing this in Fnaf 3, for doing it physically, we have the same problem, because the puppet is also in Fnaf 3, and not just as a phantom, but physically. We see her reflection, and that means she's 100% real. And that would just be bad storytelling for Charlotte to just be lazy. Oh yeah, and pressing pictures through a camera screen or pressing tiles in a goddamn wall.
3, 9, 5, 2, 4, 8.
Really?
Will not do you any good. And also, the trophy for the clock ending, which is the canon ending of Fnaf World, is of the bite victim. And that only makes sense if Happiest Day is for him. So yeah, Happiest Day is for the bite victim. But the thing is, he doesn't put the pieces together until much later in the timeline. He only puts the pieces together once he's ready, once he has closure. He has to make his killer, or his killers, feel what they made him feel. Happiest Day being for the bite victim is really what made me begin considering this theory, and I now do believe it. As I said earlier, not 100%, but I do believe it. But I think I'm going to save that slew of evidence, Happiest Day and stuff, for later in the video. In the Bear of Revenge cutscenes from Ultimate Custom Night, the bear seems to represent the bite victim himself, with Foxy being Mike. Bite victim is trying to get revenge on Mike for killing him, which is exactly what he does in Fnaf 4. The protagonist of Ultimate Custom Night, however, is of course William Afton, not Michael. I know a lot of people are going to ask why the bite victim was killed by Mike and then tortures William instead. Well, there's a couple answers to this. The first one is one that a lot of people have said in the past, which I never really believed, but now I think it's a possibility. It's the theory that the bite victim could have survived, but William unplugged his life support, which killed him. I don't really know why he would do this though, as I do actually think he cares about the bite victim. Maybe not a whole lot, but enough that he didn't want him to die, which we know due to him trying to keep the bite victim away from the animatronics during the Fnaf 4 minigames while speaking through the Fredbear plush, because that's a theory I do believe. Another option could be that the bite victim blames William for his death, since Fredbear's family diner was his restaurant, and Fredbear and Spring Bonnie were, not completely but partially, his animatronics. This is probably the most likely option in my opinion. But jumping from the most likely to the least likely is that the bite victim mistakes William for Michael. This doesn't make much sense to me because I think he would have already forgiven him by this point. And Michael, I mean. And the final way he could be the one William shouldn't have killed is under BB5th. Just in case some of you don't know what BB5th is, it's the theory that the bite victim is the fifth child in the missing children's incident. It usually also involves the bite victim being Cassidy. However, I don't believe this theory. There's multiple things that go against it in my opinion, and I just don't think it's the kind of storyline Scott would have chosen to go for. Why would he make a kid die off screen, get revived off screen, then get killed again like 3 months later? That's slightly stupid. There may be other ways I haven't thought of, so if you can think of any, just leave them in the comments. Now let's continue on with the Bear of Vengeance cutscenes. The Japanese actually does not match the subtitles, and it is completely different, which I think most of us know. But here's a quote from those cutscenes, the actual English. I realized that floating in a pond is a good way to meditate. The problem was the troublesome kids at school. So the bear who seems to represent the bite victim likes to meditate in a pond. The only time we ever see a pond is in the Old Man Consequences minigame, where the one you shouldn't have killed drowns in the pond. And also, another quote states, the last time I sank, I got sunk there. So the bear sank in the pond, again connecting to the Old Man Consequences minigame. Next up, this part is really interesting. The bear got a vision where he met his ancestors. The bite, and the one you should not have killed, don't meet the bite victim, I mean, and the one you shouldn't have killed don't meet their ancestors, but they do meet with, well, some people after drowning, but I'll get to that later. Those are some interesting parts of the bear's dialogue. Now let's get into the Foxy dialogue. Foxy intends to troll the bear until the day he dies. This definitely seems to parallel Mike, as he obviously pranks the bite victim throughout the Fnaf 4 minigames. This next part is actually kind of funny, but it is 100% true for Mike, at the very least in Fnaf 4. Foxy intends to be the bite victim's antagonist, and he says that he has no time for character development. In Fnaf 4, Mike doesn't have much, if any, character development, especially since the bite victim is the main character for the majority of the minigames in Fnaf 4. Next, Foxy says the pond is a good place to meditate, but the bear gets there first. This is just the first piece of evidence to prove that maybe Mike is actually Old Man Consequences. And if this is true, it would certainly be good evidence for the bite victim being the one you shouldn't have killed. Then we get more hints at Foxy being Mike. He apparently rolled the bear in alpaca poop, whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much everything from the Bear of Vengeance cutscenes. Next up, we have another connection between Mike and Old Man Consequences. It's a small one, but in Step Closer, Pete, who is a Mike parallel, goes fishing just like Old Man Consequences infinitely does. Next, we got some stuff to talk about from Curse of Dreadbear in FNAF VR. The two new animatronics in the DLC are a Fredbear animatronic and a Foxy animatronic. Fredbear is obviously the animatronic that killed the bite victim, as well as a version of the one he possesses. Dreadbear's brain is also very important, just like how Jake had a brain tumor in the real Jake, as well as the bite victim's brain being crushed during the bite of 83, of course being the thing that killed him. This connects the bite victim with Dreadbear. Grim Foxy is a representation of Mike, due to him being the only other character added with the DLC about the bite victim, where Grim Foxy is a side character who is actually pretty important, similar to Mike's role in FNAF 4. Plus, it's a version of Foxy, and Mike is obviously associated with Foxy. Unless you believe Mike victim, but like, most people don't, so. And finally with Curse of Dreadbear, we have the fact that Foxy's pirate ship is on a red lake. Foxy, a character Mike is associated with, has a pirate ship on a red lake. And where does Old Man Consequences hang out? Right next to a red pond. And also, the bite victim parallel, Dreadbear, crawls out of the same red lake, just like how the one you shouldn't have killed drowns in a red lake. Is this a coincidence? I definitely don't think so. So all that evidence might be enough, but the final piece of evidence that made me first consider this theory and what ultimately made me decide that this theory has to be true, or is most likely true in my opinion, is Happiest Day. Happiest Day is for the bite victim, right? As we went over already. But the thing is, we know that Happiest Day is for the one you should not have killed. How? Look at what happens after the one you should not have killed drowns in Fnaf World. We get an image of someone with their arms around two smaller people, and this does not make sense to be anyone other than Mike with his arms around Elizabeth and the bite victim. Because if this was Cassidy, it shouldn't just show us people we have never seen before. No, this is the bite victim with Mike and Elizabeth. This should be enough to say that the bite victim is the one you should not have killed. But the smoking gun of this scene and the smoking gun of the one you should not have killed being the FNAF 4 bite victim is the name of this scene in the files of FNAF World. Happiest Day. If Happiest Day is for the bite victim, and Happiest Day is for the one you should not have killed, they must be one and the same. Now, I have a feeling a lot of people are still going to say that the one you should not have killed is Cassidy, but that doesn't really have to be the case. It's actually possible that the vengeful spirit and the one you should not have killed are two different spirits. One is Cassidy, one is the bite victim. This could actually explain why you don't get the final cutscene right after you complete the Old Man Consequences minigame, because there's two spirits behind the game. Once a bite victim is set free, it doesn't matter, because Cassidy is still around and keeping William in Ultimate Custom Night until she eventually lets her own soul rest. But she doesn't get set free, as I mentioned in my timeline. But yeah, that's pretty much everything there is to this theory. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please do be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Subscribe to Shadow Libra, link to his channel will be in the description. And yeah, I'll see you all in my next video. Impulsive and out. Peace.